friendly hospitals then.
Right.
We do now.
Right.
So it's entirely different.
It's the difference, even when having my son, you know, both were in the hospital, but having my son, the way that they treated the whole situation compared to having my daughter. Like,
entirely different.
With my son, they were like, here's all this formula. You know what I mean? And then this time they were like, do you want us even to give that to you if you want? You know what I mean? And so it's like, wow, that big change in 8 years. You know what I mean?
Yes. And I actually gave birth in the same hospital from my first and my second. It was entirely different. With my first, I don't even recall being asked if I was going to breastfeed. And when I delivered the second time, every single person that I came in contact with me asked me, oh, so you're going to breastfeed, right? So you're going to breastfeed, right?
Right.
I wasn't even offered any type of formula at all.
Right. The second time, it wasn't offered at all.
No.
And then even like the first time, it was like, just in case, here you go.
Yeah.
Like here, like, so it was like, okay, you know, but like, and plus, again, it goes back to when you know better, you do better. You know, things. I mean, nothing. Again, and I just was literally in the DMs. I mean, now I hate that they've made the DMs sound like this whole sexualized.
Yes, I know, exactly. It's like, you just call them messages. Like, it's so shady.
Now, you know, like, I hate that it's been like that. But anyway, I was just speaking to someone, too, about in the DMs about, like, how just, I'm not, like, I don't want anybody to ever come to my page and feel like I'm judging you to be one way or the other. You know what I mean?
No.
And so then, like, it's like, if you want to go formula, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I don't ever want people to think that, like, oh, she's just one of those breastfeeding.
No. And I tell people all the time, if breastfeeding is what you want to do, I'm here to support you.
Exactly.
I never want, you know, it's a very fine line because even with the IBCLC community or the CLC or CBC, whatever credential you have, you know, it's a very fine line in terms of, you know, we want to be pro breastfeeding, but you don't want to shame anybody. Listen.
Exactly.
You don't know anybody's situation.
You don't know. There's a million different things.
A million different factors. What I want women that I meet to know is that you have the option.
Right.
And here are your resources.
Right.
Here's how to find the information.
Right.
Here's what you should do. You know, the same way we spend researching on car seats and cribs.
Yes.
We need to spend that same amount of time on breastfeeding resources.
Absolutely.
You know.
Because I think a lot of times, especially in a lot of new moms, they come in and they think like, oh, I have to get this exactly right. And I have to do this right. And I have to do this. And then when something starts like
going wrong,
they're like, oh my God, I'm the worst mom.
No, it happens. No. It's not easy.
It's not easy.
I tell people breastfeeding is natural, but it is not easy.
No, it's not. Not. But it's not impossible either. You know what I mean?
It's definitely not.
Right. It's like, so then like I was so adamant this time, like, okay, this is what I'm gonna make it happen.
Yes.
But if it didn't happen, I wouldn't have been like, and then, you know what I mean? Like, I would have just did my best, you know?
You know how some people focus on birth plans? I had a breastfeeding plan.
Exactly.
I had, in my notepad on my iPhone, I had links to resources on what to do. You know, here I had everything bookmarked. So in the middle of the night, if I couldn't call anybody, this is what I was going to do.
Right.
So I was like, well, let me, you know, I'm also fortunate. My sister is an OBGYN. So I was just like calling her and she's like, Tamiqua, the baby's not even here yet. Like, calm down. When he comes, he'll be here.
Right.
And you'll just know what to do. I'm like, don't tell me that. I won't know what to do. I haven't done this before. I'm not going to know. And she was like, but then you figure it out.
You'll figure it out.
You figure it out.
Like, to this day, like my daughter is 9 months.
And you still have to figure it out. You're still figuring. Guess what? When you're done breastfeeding and they're 16 driving you crazy, you're still gonna have to figure it out. Like that's it.
To this day, I literally just now before we got on here, and yes, my tripod the other one went in a mess. I was breastfeeding her before I got on here because she is with my mom, and I went and I was like, man, this girl latch. If this girl latch don't she has 2 teeth on the bottom and her latch is all over the place.
All over the place.
And then she's doing gymnastics. And so the whole thing is that like people be like, okay, well, my daughter's latch isn't perfect, and or my kid's latch is not perfect, and then it becomes destruct. And to be honest, even when she was born, I swear, even though the doctor didn't tell me, but she does have a longer
frenulum.
Yes. And so I think that if I would have took her to a consultant, they would have probably did a clip on her.
Yeah.
But she figured it out somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But tongue ties are not new. Tongue ties have been around for as long as women have been breastfeeding.
Right.
And some of them need to be corrected. Some of them don't.
Right.
You'd have to go to someone who's licensed in it. There are dentists who do it.
Just so new moms will know what I'm talking about. Can you explain what a tongue tie is?
Well, I'm not a tongue tie specialist, right? But you can recognize a tongue tie by, when I'm gonna stick out my tongue, but I can stick out my tongue, or I can stick it up, and this part down here, if it's too short, the baby will need to have it adjusted, or may need to have it adjusted. But you really want to see somebody who is specialized in tongue ties, and honestly. It may take a few people. I shared this on my website. My first encounter with a lactation consultant was right after delivery. I had an emergency C-section with my son after a stalled labor, stalled induction, and we get up entire room after spending an hour in recovery. And the lactation consultant walked in. She looked at my son. He hadn't even latched. She just, he was crying. She looked at him. She goes, "Oh, he has a tongue tie," hands me a brochure, and then walks out. That was it. And I was like, huh? What do you mean he has a tongue tie? I'm like, do I just stop? Well, give me the formula because he has a tongue tie.
Right.
I didn't stop. I kept going. And I stayed in the hospital for 5 days after my C-section. We were fine. But at the time, I didn't know better that I could ask to go home. So we just stayed until they kicked us out. Right. So we stayed, and by the time I got home, my nipples were in shambles.
Yes. Okay.
And because our latch,
because I know, because there are some new moms on here. Like I said, they'll probably, if they're not in here, they'll probably watch it later. Yeah. And then, to explain, what are the things that could happen when the baby does have that longer, tie.
So, well, one, it's common for babies and moms to have latching issues because, breastfeeding is natural, but it's all about positioning. So depending on how the baby is, you want to make sure that your baby is tummy to tummy with you. Your baby and you are tummy to tummy. The baby's facing you. And when you hold, I should have brought a doll. But when you hold your baby, you want to make sure your baby has neck control or be able to move his or her head up and down so that they can position themselves on your breast. And you can schedule a video consult. I'll try to work on some pictures that I can upload to my site, but it's really just about positioning, and it takes more than one time. Again, every single time you latch your baby, you have to position. My daughter now, we just started weaning at 2.5. This was our weaning week, but over the last 2 or 3 months, she's 2.5 and she still had latching issues. Why? Because her teeth are coming in. She wants to sit a certain way. She doesn't want to lay down, and she wants to stand up and nurse. And I'm like, okay, well, you can't do this. And she's like, well, mommy, I want to do this. I'm like, well, you're hurting me.
Exactly.
But so it really is about the latch, and it really is about positioning, and it's going to be trial and error. But what shouldn't be happening is you shouldn't be wincing in pain every single time you go to latch your baby on. And if that is happening, you want to see someone. And you should know that you have resources. Even if you're still in the hospital, you should be talking to your nurses. You can ask for the lactation consultants in the hospital. You can go to the classes that they have. I tell everybody who's pregnant, who I run into, don't wait until after you've had your baby to take a prenatal breastfeeding class. And, you might do CPR, you might do a prenatal class. But make sure you see a lactation counselor, a lactation consultant, someone who is specialized in lactation so that they can set you up with the right expectations. What I find is the biggest disconnect is the expectations, where we expect for it to be 1 and 1 and 2. And, my baby's here, I'm going to hold them and latch them and everything is going to work. But it doesn't always work out that way. It's very, very rare that you're going to latch your baby the first time and it's going to happen. Because guess what? You just went through how many hours of labor, and that baby just went through that labor with you, and they're brand new in the world. They don't know.
Exactly.
The only thing they've had in their mouth is their hands and maybe their feet.
Right.
They don't know what to do with a nipple, you know?
Right.
So it really is practice. But if you are in pain, you want to get help. You know, and
and I think you're right, absolutely right with the expectations. I think because a lot of the times, like, I don't know if we spoke because we spoke so much in messages, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Things like even when you first latch on, people are kind of like, oh my God, that hurts, because you've never done it before ever. You know what I mean? Like nothing. Well, yeah, on your boobs like that, trying
exactly.
And so I think that yes, there's some comfort with that. You know, like getting used to it. And then also with the fact that, like, once you do start latching onto, I don't know if as many people talk they should, how that correlates, that sucking correlates to your uterus, you know,
the cramping. Yes.
You know what I mean? Because I know, like with the contraction of the uterus, it's like people tell you that, you know, like, oh, you're gonna feel that the cramp, and then maybe like us with, you know, after time we forget. I mean, but I definitely remember that this second time around, and the fact that it was even worse. The pain was bad, but I really think that, okay, this is so natural. It's supposed to just happen, and why is it comfort and this and that and the other? But there may be some discomfort, at least of discomfort that they should really, like, on a real talk. Because I try to.
Okay. So if you are having,
what should they expect, and then what is not okay? What is okay and what's not okay?
So in terms of
as far as
uterine contractions and what's okay and what's not okay. So the more pregnancies a woman has, and when she's breastfeeding, the worse those contractions will come. So the first time you deliver a baby and you breastfeed, you may not have noticed much of a difference in terms of the contraction of your uterus, because it's, you know, it's contracting and doing what it's supposed to do, but it's not going to be as painful. But the second time or the third time with my daughter, it was horrible. But it is normal as long as the pain when you're breastfeeding, it is normal. And that's a sign that your uterus is contracting and you want it to contract and go back into place. And, you know, as long as you speak with your OBGYN, you're monitoring your bleeding and things like that, and they'll tell you what to watch out for in terms of how many pads to go through and things like that. But in terms of pain when you're latching on, what a woman should be aware of is cracked or bleeding nipples. And you want to be aware of that because if your nipples are cracked and bleeding, then you're giving yourself a chance to have an infection. And you don't want to do that. You've just had a baby. You want to make sure that, you know, yes, some bleeding, you may see it, but then that's a sign. I need to make a phone call. If you want to call your OBGYN, call them. Sometimes they have lactation consultants, and call. I know that there are some offices in some areas who offer in-house lactation services. When you leave your hospital, you also have, like, you know, they give you that pamphlet. Even if it's not you or your partner, someone who's at home with you, they need to know where that is so they can call the number and get you help. So I'll give you an example. When I had my son, and I was day 5, day 6, first night home from the hospital, I woke up. I sent my husband a Baby's RS and got a pump.
Oh,
can you hear me?
A little bit. Oh no!
Are you there? I can see you. Okay, I'm going to keep talking just in case you can hear me still.
Hello?
But when we got home from the hospital, I sent the next day, I sent my husband home to get a pump.
Wait, let's see.
I'm going to pause.
Yes, there.
I sent him to get a breast pump, and then I made a call. And I really just wanted to make sure I was doing the right thing. And, you know, I needed to give myself some relief because I was having issues latching myself. So what I did was I pumped on one side and continued to latch on the other, and I applied breast milk, my own breast milk, to my breast to help with the healing, as well as coconut oil and then lanolin at the time. So you want to make sure that you are, as much as you're nursing, you want to make sure you're taking care of your breasts. So if you are having cracked nipples or bleeding, you want to reach out to your lactation consultant. You should, the same way I like to tell people, the same way you interview your OBGYN or maybe your pediatrician, you want to know, do the same with a lactation consultant. It doesn't hurt to pick up a phone and give us a call, you know, and say, hey, would you mind talking to me? What are your views? What are, you know, you want to be able to build a rapport with this person, because you may see this person one time, hopefully, or sometimes you might be able to see them 2 or 3 times, because guess what? Breastfeeding is a journey. And you start one way and end up completely different, you know, over the span of when you breastfeed. You know, it's not just one and done. I've talked to clients before where I've seen them right after delivery and then not again until they were getting ready to go back to work. Say, Tamiqua, I'm going back to work. Can you come in and help me? You know, what do I need to do? How many times do I need to be pumping? What, you know, help me work out a schedule. How do I talk to my employer? You know, what am I entitled to? How do I go to find these resources and things like that? So it really depends. And you want to be able to have a relationship with that person, because you want to be able to know that this person is, one, the right fit for me, and that they're going to support me the way I need to be supported.
Right.
So you should.
What, just in general, like, I guess one of my questions that I had, even when it came to lactation consultants themselves, around how much do you, of course, everybody has their own needs, right? But is there like a range to know how much that people would be spending on a visit?
Honestly, it depends on your area. I've seen anywhere from, and it depends on the service that you're doing. So I'll give you an example. I do a 30-minute phone consult, 30-minute consult for $50. However, if I'm talking to you within that first 15 minutes and we say, you know what, this is not really a 30-minute consult, I need to see you face to face. Here's what we can do. We can do an initial follow-up, which is anywhere between 2 and 3 hours, or we could do half that. You know, it really depends. It really depends on area as well, too, because I've seen prices that range from $100 to in-person consult to, honestly, in California and Seattle, $400 or $500, $600. Yes, that base. So it really depends. It also depends on whether or not that person is in network with your insurance, because as we know, lactation services are covered under the Affordable Care Act. So you should be able to, and I say should because it doesn't always work that way, but you should be able to get reimbursed for the services that you receive from a lactation consultant.
Okay. And that's really important for people to think about, like, well, just to explore more of the things that their insurance is going to entitle them to. Because I don't think a lot of women, well, hopefully more nowadays, but a lot of women think, okay, well, I don't know, I don't want to be out of the pocket for all these things, but there are a fair amount of things that your insurance, especially with the Affordable Care Act, that your insurance will cover. Like, they will definitely, I know from me just going through it, that they cover the pump, some of the pieces. That was my insurance. You know? They're supposed to cover your pump. Your insurance, right? You can call your insurance company and ask them what it is that they cover. You have to do, and mine was a little bit like, you have to call this place and call that place and this, but like, still, it's a free pump, and so you can. I tell people, if you have a pump on your registry, that's nice, but take it off. Call your insurance company, save your money, have your friends and family save their money. You know what they should do? They should buy you a gift certificate to a lactation consultant. They could buy you a gift certificate to a postpartum doula. There are so many other services that they could spend and invest in you, because and I know I've had the conversation like, well, I don't know if I'm going to need you. Well, pick up a phone and
All you have to do is pick up a phone. You can call me, you can message me, you can, say, hey, is this something you might be able to do? And if it's not something I could do, I can refer out to you. I tell people all the time, well, especially if they don't have family in the other area, have you considered giving them a postpartum doula? Have you considered giving them a lactation consultant?
Explain more what a postpartum doula is. Wait, can you, first of all, I'm going again, because I keep trying to keep in mind the new moms and the moms to be. Can you explain what a doula is? And then what a postpartum doula is?
So a doula is someone who is your support and your advocate, and they are licensed and they are certified to assist you in labor and delivery. And they will either do that in a hospital setting, or at home setting. And then the postpartum doula, some doulas also offer postpartum doula services where they will come to your house and they will help you with your laundry. They will run your errands for you. They will check on you and your baby. Yes.
I need that.
Yes.
I need that now.
So they will literally come in and sometimes love on you, because it is hard. You just delivered this person, you're exhausted, you're up, you're breastfeeding. And when I tell you, I wish I would have done, I was lucky because, I've had family been able to come and do it for me. But, like my sister is in Portland, and if I couldn't come to her when, she has her next baby, guess what? I'm sending her doula because she needs it,
Yeah, I think, have you ever watched this movie, Charlize Theron?
Tully? I was literally just talking to one of my girlfriends about that yesterday. That movie is extreme.
It is extreme.
It is completely extreme. But it happens. It doesn't happen often, thankfully.
Yeah.
But postpartum psychosis is very real.
It is real.
It is very real.
It is real.
And,
it is real.
I just tell people, stand up. You can't get what you want unless you ask for it. And we need to do more asking for it. I talk to moms and they're like, well, my husband's not the one who has breasts, so he shouldn't get up in the middle of the night with me. Well, guess what? The baby has to be burped. They have to be changed, and they have to be put back to sleep.
And you have to eat. You know what I mean?
Yes. So guess what? You can ask for what you need. If you feel like you need to have him with my youngest, with my daughter now, one, I was really lucky. My husband was able to take off the 6 weeks with me. So he was home with me. And even when he went back to work, I still got him up in the middle of the night and said, hey, can you help me? Because I had a C-section. I was tired. And getting out of the bed, getting back into the bed. And I asked for help. So I did it. I used my words, and it worked out a lot better than me looking over at him like, sleeping. Yeah. And here I am up. Ask for what you need. And, the same thing with breastfeeding. If you need help, ask for it. And there's no shame in it. I think that sometimes we think that, just because we have breasts, we have this baby and we're just supposed to know what to do. And it doesn't happen that way. And you should ask for help, And when you ask for help, also know that, or be aware that the people you ask for help may not be as well versed. So sometimes I think when we think, oh, I just had a baby, the first person I want to go to is my OBGYN. Your OBGYN may not hear something that's shocking, okay? Your OBGYN didn't learn anything about breastfeeding in medical school.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So they may not know. I was lucky to have two very well-versed OBGYNs who both breastfed extensively. So I had that support. But sometimes you don't have that, and even when you go to your pediatrician, and they may not know. So you want to speak to someone who does know. And that's going to be a lactation counselor. That's going to be a lactation consultant. That's going to be your Leche League group. That's going to be your, if you're eligible for WIC, or if you have a WIC office. Even if you aren't eligible for WIC, you can go in. They do have peer counselors that you can still go in and see, and you can ask those questions. So there are resources available that you don't, you just need to know where to find them.
And you can ask those questions when I'm looking through the comments. Oh no, I didn't mean to do that. Put it back. I did it again. You can ask those questions when you are going to. No, you can ask when you are trying to figure out who to use as a OBGYN.
Absolutely.
Ask how well versed or what is their stance on breastfeeding and all that.
Yes. You know, because you know, sometimes, and you also want to know, you know, what is your policy once I've had my baby in terms of weight. You know, it's normal for babies to lose up to 10% of their birth weight. And then they go to their first visit and it's like, oh, well, your baby isn't back up to birth weight. Then they'll and what I found for what will happen is instead of asking you how many times you're nursing your baby, they will ask you how much milk is the baby getting. I don't know. It's coming out of my breast.
That drove me.
And then, but what happens is then it leads the mom to go home to strap on a pump. And I'm 1 week or 2 weeks postpartum, and I'm expecting to, you know, latch this pump on and pump 4 ounces. That's not gonna happen. We're not gonna pump 4 ounces 1 week or 2 weeks after delivery. If you have an oversupply, that might happen, but that's not gonna happen. And then it leads to, oh my God, I'm not making any milk. No. Your baby transfers. Most of the time, your baby transfers more milk or better milk than a pump ever will. There are some babies who have latching issues. That'll happen. But yes, go ahead.
I said, no, I'm like, my brain is lighting up with all these things. Yes, thank you so much for the questions. Yes, the Kelly Mom, I did find kellymomhelpful.com.
Oh, I love Kelly Mom. Kelly Mom was my go-to. I stayed on Kelly Mom. Kelly Mom is a great resource.
It's a great resource. And I've mentioned in a different thing, I actually am part of just one main Facebook group. I forgot the name of it right now, but it's very well administered. So they don't allow a lot of like crazy stuff to come in. Like unless like fact based, they will delete a comment in a second.
That's
and
good.
All comments have to be approved first before it goes into the thing.
Okay.
So it's very well
monitored.
You know, very well monitored, which is good. But I found that as a great resource to having some sort of support system. You know what I mean? To just go through. So not even if you don't even have any questions, but just so you know that you're not going crazy.
Or you're not in it alone. Like, hello.
Or that you're not in it alone.
Like, even if you're not struggling with that same issue at that same time, or even if, and, you know, 3 or 4 months later, you find yourself in, like, wait a minute. Wait, I saw this. I can go back here. So, yes. Those resources are important.
And La Leche League, I had spoke about a book before,
The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding. Very good book. It was hard to read that book because I read that book after being certified and, you know, being in this space. So it's a different view, and there's some things that I agree with, and then there's some things it's like, wait, no, that's not right. But
what are things, I guess, that if you could think of it at the moment?
I think it was just the tone, the overall tone of the book I love, because it's like, I think it's very realistic, and it's not beat you in the head type of book where you have to breastfeed and breast is best. And, you know, I think it sets the right tone in terms of do what works for you, and you ultimately have to find out what works for you and your baby. But there, you know, I can't remember, but I look for it and I'll tag it. But there were just some things where I was just like, I don't know if this would work. But again.
But then that leads to the fact that, like, some things that work for some people don't work for other people.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yes. And trial and error. It may not work today, but in a few months it might work. You know? Or even just knowing that you have options. You know, some people don't feel like they have options. So it's like, well, you know, or some people think it's all breastfeeding or mostly formula, some breastfeeding, or, you know, but it's like, you do what works for you. You know, you do what works for you. I tell people to try. If you want to try it. I will answer any question. I will do whatever I need to do to help you. But ultimately, it's up to you. And I think that, you know, I can't latch your baby for you. I'm not going to be there. I would love to be there at 3 o'clock in the morning helping you. But, you know, you really need to, decide for yourself in terms of what you want to do and what you're willing to do. And I always tell people, a mom's mental health is always the most important. So there are some people who will tell you breast is best and you have to do everything this way, that way. No, mom, you need to take care of you. Do what you need to do.
I just said that in the message today. Like within the last hour to someone on here, I literally just said that. I said, because I don't exactly remember what we were talking about. And then, someone asked me about I always say that I'm not a doctor about anything. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a geek about different things. And so I'm just a geek. And so, but I also have these experiences that I've gone through with life. And so that I'm not a first time mom, like I said to the person. She was asking about when she was kind of worried about if her baby, who is a couple of months old, when the baby gets sick, or if, it is a matter of when, because it's not a matter of if. You know what I mean? Like when the baby gets sick, what should be done? I'm like, wait a minute. First of all, I'm not a doctor.
Yes.
Second of all, is that a lot of times, even with us with a common cold, is that
you gotta write it out.
You gotta write it out.
You gotta write it out.
Even with the baby. I mean, and I said that I must say that my son, who was formula fed, has, knock on wood, he was more sick than my daughter has been this time.
Listen, I would have said with my son, I'm just gonna say this: daycare germs are the worst, because with my son, he did an in-home daycare with we had a friend watch him who she loves him.
He's coming.
Hi. That's your oldest twin, looking just like his mama.
Exactly.
Just like his mama. But with my son, he didn't go into a daycare setting until he was 2. And then that's when he started getting sick. And then with my youngest daughter, she went into a daycare at 4 months old, and she was sick the first week we brought her home. So I'm just going to say it's just germs. And I will tell you this.
Yeah.
So now she's 2.5, and this year she's been sick a lot less. And both of them were exclusively breastfed. So it's just kind of, germs are everywhere. You wash your hands, you wash their hands, and you do what you have to do. But most of the time when they're babies, you just write it out. Although breast milk is magic.
Right.
Breast milk is 100% magic. And breast milk does help to fight off germs. I don't care what anybody else says.
You gotta write it out.
Yes. Write it out. I can't hear you.
I definitely hear that. She's all we did, we stayed in the house pretty much, and that I had the humidifier on, and I was making sure that I was well fed and stuff, because she wanted to nurse a lot, you know what I mean? And so make sure that I was well, in the best of health, so that I'm able to give her what she may need. But with my son, I mean, it seems like the end of the world when it's all happening. You know what I mean? Like when the baby's sick, and it's like, oh man, the baby won't go to sleep, and the baby's nose is thing. But if it's a common cold, there's not much you can do but write it out. And so
that is it.
First couple of times, but that's what I was telling her. But I definitely seen a difference so far with the two.
With them, yeah.
But I want to see. Let me see. Someone says in the thing, yes, it's hard to block out the voices with other people. And I want to say that within certain communities, there seems to be some people who are pro breastfeeding, and then people are like, why are you doing that for? Oh, you still breastfeeding? You know what I mean? Like, even at 9 months, and when I go into the office and I have to go to the lactation, it's like,
I'm still breastfeeding. Unfortunately, I think that's only here in the United States. And most other places, it's very, very normal and very common for women and babies to breastfeed up until the baby's 5. But in the U.S., it's not something that we see openly. And, in fact, they talk about women breastfeeding in silence. And I shared a post a few weeks ago on my Instagram page me breastfeeding my daughter, we were bowling with friends, and I couldn't remember the last time I nursed her at this age in public. Mind you, I nurse everywhere, anywhere I have to. And I've never used a cover. I believe everybody should do whatever they want and whatever they're comfortable with. But for me, I was like, oh my God, when was the last time I nursed her in public? Most of the time I'm saying no just because she's like 30 pounds and it's hard for me to hold her up if we're not somewhere sitting. But I was like, I can't remember the last time I nursed her in public, so I snapped a picture. But people would be like, you're still breastfeeding? Yes. She'll stop eventually before she goes to college, but you know, the thing is, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that the milk stops being a benefit. Just because she's eating regular table food doesn't mean that the milk is any less beneficial for her. You know, people like, oh, and we also, now, a lot of people also tend to look at breasts as just sexual objects. Breasts are made for breastfeeding. That's what they're there for. You know, we've made it into something that they're not. I mean, like, what do you think babies had before there was formula? They breastfed. Nobody said anything about it. They breastfed. That was it. I think you just have to, it is hard to follow the voices. You know, I wish for everyone, I wish everyone had the support that, you know, I felt empowered because I knew I wanted to breastfeed and I wasn't going to let anybody tell me. I'm also the person who, if you tell me not to do something, I'm going to do it just because you told me not to. So that kind of just fueled me even more. And I told people, you know, I probably got into this career because somebody told me not to. When I went back to work, I had a hard time going back to work with breastfeeding. And that kind of led into a whole other things where my HR department literally did not know that it was against the law to tell women they needed to pump in the bathroom. And I'm like, no. Really? Yes. The head of HR, in an email that I still have to this day, they were like, oh yes, you can just breastfeed. We allow them to breastfeed to pump in the bathroom. No, that is against the law and has been since the Affordable Care Act. And they were like, huh? Yes. So that was a big eye-opening moment. There are lots of things, like even with that, I don't know how many women are aware that if you travel for work, it is your work's responsibility to make sure that you have a place to pump wherever you are. So if you have to travel for a conference, they have to make sure that when you get to that conference, you have a place to pump. Because that's part of your job. If they want you to be able to do this, they have to do it. You know, and I'm not just talking about in airports. I'm talking about like in offices. You know, people are like, well, I visited this office and there was no place for me to pump. Well, they have to figure it out.
Pumping at a maximum prison. She's working. I think that's she may work. She can clarify. But I actually was going to an event earlier last year, right? And I had to reach out and be like, hey, is there gonna be somewhere for me to pump here? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I know that I'm just a team, but a lot of people don't think about that. You know what I mean? They don't think about and it was a woman event. It was like an event just for women. And
that's a whole nother conversation.
Like, okay,
how women are failing other women. One of the biggest complaints that I see is actually in the OBGYN field, in hospitals, and nurses. That, you know, nurses don't have the time to go on a pump, you know, and they're busy. And I know they're taking care of patients. They're saving people's lives. And guess what? Their nursing managers and their nursing departments don't allow them time to pump, you know. My sister is a physician and she had to block off time in between seeing patients to be able to pump. You know, you still don't have a nursing room. Oh no. What prison is this? We need to get them on it. No. Send me a message. We need to let them know that this is not okay. No, not okay. Please send me a direct message so that we can figure out what we need to do to make sure that you have a private, space that you can pump in, because that's unacceptable.
There you go.
And you work for the government, well, the government is going to need to take care of you, because the government says that they're supposed to provide a room for you to pump in and a refrigerator for you to store your milk. Okay?
Yes. Yes. There you go.
No.
Yes,
they can't do this.
Yeah, it's. But the thing is that if you don't say anything, but like you have to be empowered with the information to provide it to the people up. You know,
absolutely. But it's sad that we have to even do it. It's sad that we have to do it. But there's some things that I've learned. Your HR department is not for you. Your HR department is to protect your employer. So that's a huge thing that I've learned. Your HR department is not for you. They're for your employer. They're there to make sure that your employer is complying with laws so that nobody sues them. But guess what? You know, nobody wants to be the one to ruffle the feathers, but I'm also not the one who wants to compromise my milk supply and my own health. And people don't think about it. They're like, oh, well, you could just give your baby formula. Mastitis is a medical condition. You know, if I go too long without pumping and I get clogged milk ducts that lead to mastitis, that can lead to sepsis, I'm going to end up in the hospital. You know, that is a medical issue. That is a medical condition. And guess what? They need to address it.
Yeah.
You know, so we have to.
In the long run, the reason why other countries are such big advocates for because breastfeeding in the long run help. It's like a holistic approach to it, because if the baby is healthier, if the mother is healthier, then the companies don't end up spending as much money on sickness related things like
they don't.
So other countries have this foresight, but unfortunately
no, we're lacking. We are lacking in that department. We are. You know, every time a woman breastfeeds, the longer a woman breastfeeds, she decreases her chances of breast cancer, cervical cancer, and ovarian cancer. And when you breastfeed your baby, you are giving them a leg up in terms of not getting diabetes, reducing diarrhea, respiratory infections, asthma. Like, it works for everyone. It's not just about the baby. It's about the mom too. You know, the longer, I mean, I'm all about what can I do to reduce my chances of anything, you know? You mean I just have to breastfeed my baby? I don't got to go. I don't have to. That's it.
It sure is.
You know?
Yes, it is. It's like, that's a whole other thing. I try to get.
That's another conversation.
That's a whole other conversation. It's a whole other conversation. I want to just backtrack. I want to thank everybody that's coming in and out. We're here with Tamiqua of Lashing in Love, and we were talking about breastfeeding and different things. I'm going to think of the questions, because I did put them. Let me not even go there with what happened. But somebody did ask, like somebody had mentioned that they had got to, every time they get to about 3 to 4 months.
Yes, you sent me that question.
Yes, okay, there we go.
I would need a lot more information, but in terms of getting to the 3 or 4 month mark and your milk supply just giving out, you want to look at the first question I would ask is, what makes you think that your milk supply isn't enough for baby? Because we have to remember, the first few weeks, the first 2 or 3 months, really, it's all about regulating what the baby needs. So as long as you are moving your milk, in order for you to make milk, you have to move milk. So what we know is that a baby will eat or will need to nurse anywhere between 10 to 12 times in a 24-hour period. So am I still doing that? Is he or she still latching on, or am I still pumping between those 10 or 12 times a day? If I've gone back to work, if I was home and I'm nursing the baby every 2 hours, every 3 hours, if I'm back to work, am I only pumping every 4 hours? So you want to look at what you're doing. That was a pretty vague question because there's so many different factors that could happen. But I would ask what you're doing. What does your day look like? What has changed from the last 2 or 3 weeks, or even over the last month that makes you think? And then sometimes when we think about our milk supply drying up, we think, how full do my breasts feel? So you have to remember, in the beginning, you're engorged, or you might be engorged, and your breasts may feel fuller because they're engorged, and not just because, well, I've met my supply. My body has regulated over time. My body, and I'm still meeting his or her needs, but I'm just not feeling as full. That makes, my first instinct is to feel my boobs because I'm like, oh, well, that's how I feel. That's my natural reaction. I'm trying not to do it on camera.
No,
But you're like, wait a minute. I haven't fed the baby. My boobs feel really heavy. I need to go feed her, or I need to go feed him. They're like, wait, this one doesn't feel right. And so you start to worry. So it may not actually be that your milk supply has gone anywhere. It's just regulated. And it's just based on the times.
Can you explain that? Because like, I think that a lot, and what's not explained a lot, let's say to moms to be and people who are trying, it would only be women who are going to breastfeed, is that that there is the way that your breasts start after you have your baby. That's not how it's gonna look by the time you get to 1 year. That's not how they're gonna feel. Not gonna be huge. They're, like right now, they're not. For me, I'm 9 months in. They're not that big, huge porn star boobs that they were when I first had her. You know what I mean? And so so I think it's not really explained how it goes through that first year. Can you give a little bit more?
So when you deliver, and depending anywhere between day 3 and day 5 of you delivering your placenta, your body is going, I don't want to say, I use the term your milk comes in, because then it makes moms feel like I don't have any milk. And what we used to call cholesterol, we now call newborn milk, because guess what? It's milk. It's just newborn milk. And it's newborn milk, and that milk is going to be there for a certain amount of time until your milk, you move from newborn milk to regular breast milk, your milk comes in. And what happens is when that new milk comes in, your breasts are heavy. You know, your milk is, I don't want to, I'm going to grab myself again. But what happens is your breasts can become swollen. And you do have very large breasts, you know, but again, your breasts during pregnancy probably grew anywhere from 1 to 2 times in size when you're pregnant. And then when your milk comes in, it gets bigger. What happens is, from the time you deliver, usually anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks, what happens is you're sending signals to your body to say, I need to make more milk. So what happens is you latch your baby on, you have prolactin and you have oxytocin. So prolactin makes the milk, and oxytocin is what moves the milk. And what happens is, the more if you breastfeed I don't want to give it a time, because timing shouldn't be when you feed your baby. It should be, you should be looking for cues in terms of when your baby's ready to be fed. So let's say you are noticing your baby needs to be fed. He or she is moving their mouth, or they're putting their hands to their mouth. Rapid eye movement is one of them. And before the baby starts, wailing and crying, what happens is you latch your baby on, and you nurse your baby. In a few hours after that, you go to latch your baby again. What happens is your body's sending these cues. I fed here, I fed here, I fed here. But the longer that spacing is between your body, your milk just kind of plateaus. It's like, okay. But the more you continue to send those, when you have those intervals of you nursing, you're making more milk. So what happens is, as your baby becomes bigger, they will maybe slow down in terms of, well, I nursed every 90 minutes or every 2 hours, and they space out. And then your body says, well, he or she only needs let's say 14 or 20 ounces within a 24-hour period, your body will adjust to that. So you're no longer feeling engorged. You're no longer, you know, in the middle of the night waking up with soaked sheets because you're having a letdown, because your body is adjusting to that. In terms of your body is making what your baby needs, and it's not an oversupply.
Right.
You know, so we may feel what my boobs aren't getting as full. You're just meeting what your baby needs. Right. And that's it. But what happens is we freak out.
Right. Right.
We freak out and like,
which can make things worse.
Yes. Yes. Because then you're like, well, what do I need to do? You don't need to do anything. Just continue to do what you've been doing. And unless your baby is not gaining weight, unless your baby's not having, you know, enough poops and, you know, pee diapers, that's when you worry. But if your baby is thriving, you know, if your baby is meeting their goals in terms of developmental goals, if they're having enough wet diapers and poopy diapers, and there's no other signs of, you know, to worry, don't worry. You know, there's nothing to be concerned about if, you know, your baby's still doing all those things. Just because your breasts don't feel full doesn't mean that you're not meeting your baby's needs.
Right. Okay. Oh, there's a question. Are these cues for the duration of feeding? I don't know if that.
So, one of the biggest clues to whether or not your baby is full during a feeding is a hand. So when your baby has a tight fist,
oh no, there's 2 minutes remaining.
All right. So if your baby has
I'll restart it again.
Okay. So if your baby has a tight fist, that means they're still nursing. But usually when your baby is milk drunk, like you see in the memes on Instagram, they're nice and relaxed and their hand is nice and relaxed. So that's one thing that you can watch in terms of your baby and your baby's hands.
Okay. That's good.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
At least, right. I think the two things that I did this time that I think made such a big difference is that I stopped looking at the clock all the time.
Yes.
And I started watching the baby to see when she would have those cues.
Yes.
And then realizing that all I really needed to do all the time, just keep feeding
watching her.
Yeah.
People are like, well, what am I supposed to do? Feed your baby?
Feed your baby.
Don't worry about the 2 hours. Don't worry about the 3 hours. Just put your baby on the boob.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And yes, it may feel like forever. Sometimes, like my daughter falls asleep and wakes up and falls asleep and wakes up all the time during
because she's like, I'm not done.
Exactly.
I was taking a break.
The book says don't go over 45 minutes.
Well, okay. So the book says
if this ends, I'm gonna restart it again. So
so even though the book may say don't go over 45 minutes, the thing is that your baby's not completely latching on for 45 minutes. Within, you might sit down and start to nurse him or her for, you know, at 2:15, but that baby hasn't been suckling and nursing for